I wanted to find out what difference the different sized countershaft sprockets make on the Honda XR650L. So I got hold of a whole set of FritzCo sprockets with 13, 14, 15 and 16 tooth. In this video we're going to look at the fuel consumption and usability on the highway. Hi, I'm FritzCo from AdventureBikeTroop.com, and in this video we're going to take a look at the usability, the fuel consumption, the gearing of the different size countershaft sprockets on the Honda XR650L. So the process was basically to first fit the 15 tooth, that's the standard gearing. So the standard gearing on the Honda XR650L is 15 tooth in the front, 45 in the rear. It's the easiest to swap out the countershaft sprockets, and one tooth in the front is the same as 3 tooths in the rear. So it's easier and it changes the gearing by more than changing out the rear sprocket. And changing the rear sprocket, you have to take out all the different bolts and its whole process. You have to remove the wheel, whereas the countershaft sprocket, you can simply loosen the rear wheel, slacken the chain, swap out the sprocket, and off you go again. So I started off with the 15 tooth, the standard gearing. The idea was to ride out on the freeway. It's a fairly flat route with some undulating hills, 50 kilometers out, 50 kilometers back. I filled up before, up to a certain point in the tank, right at the bottom of the neck. And then as I returned after exactly 100 kilometers, I filled it up to the same spot again, and then see how much fuel I used and compared that between the sprockets. So for the fuel consumption test, I decided to maintain a constant speed in 5th gear to simulate touring with the bike. So I tried to have the same clothes on, a backpack on the back, sit in the same position for wind resistance. I tried to pick days where the weather was more or less the same, so no wind. But I figured that it'll cancel out anyways if you go out and back. And I try to maintain 110 kilometers per hour. That's indicated, so it's about 107 kilometers per hour on the GPS. In miles per hour, I think it's about 65 thereabouts. I'll put it on the screen here somewhere. And I figured that's more or less the national speed limit. It's between 100 and 120 kilometers per hour in most countries, and that is a comfortable speed to tour at without a tall screen. You don't want to be going too fast if you ride far from home. So I felt between 100 and 110. So I tried to maintain 110 kilometers per hour, but I would never drop below 100 kilometers per hour. And then if the speed limit changed, it was only, I think, twice, once to 80 kilometers per hour and another time to 60. Then I slacked down, I had to gear down sometimes. So let's take a look at my notes that I recorded when I turned around with the 15 tooth sprocket next to the road. Okay, I'm at the turnaround point now, 50 kilometers out of town. I'm going to turn around now and do the same back now. We're on the 15 tooth sprocket, the standard gearing. I'm sticking to the speed limit. I'm doing 110 kilometers per hour on the speedo. It's about 105 on the GPS. On the uphills, I try to stick in 5th gear. Except if it really lugs. There's, I think, one hill that I had to gear down in 4th, but there's enough torque to keep it going at 110 in 5th gear. There's one section where I have to do 80 kilometers per hour, and then another section where I have to go down to 80. I gear down to 4th, and then 60. I went down to 3rd, and then I accelerate slowly again. I'm going to turn around now. I mean, it's very comfortable at this speed. There's no wind now, it's quite hot. I checked the tire pressure, it's 1.5 in the front, 1.6 in the rear. I'm going to do the same on all the other runs. There's no traffic on this road, which is awesome, so there's not a lot of passing. So I try to just maintain a steady speed. Sometimes I dip below to 100 kilometers per hour, but I haven't been below 100, haven't been above 110 kilometers per hour. So we're going to turn around now, fill up, and then see what the consumption is on the standard 15 tooth sprocket. So let's look at the fuel consumption figure. So I filled it up again. I had no idea. Usually my fuel consumption is about 17 kilometers per liter. That's playing around in the dirt with the 14 tooth XRR sprocket that I had on before. So I filled up, it was 5.34 liters, that's 18.75 kilometers per liter. That's the best I've had before, but it's obviously because I maintained that constant speed. The revs was a bit lower with the standard side sprocket. That's 44 miles per gallon, and I'm happy with that. With my old KLR, I got 23 kilometers per liter when I maintained this speed, but it's not bad. I've done the Dave's mod, so it is a bit richer. I did a larger main jet, so that would have made the difference. But anyways, with the 15 tooth, that's very comfortable to maintain a speed of 110, only gear down once or twice on uphills. Yeah, so that's the 15 tooth. Let's take a look at the 14 tooth. So I swapped them out. I left off the sprocket cover. It's just easier to check that everything's still alright there. It fits a bit easier than the 15 tooth. I know with my 15 tooth, I can show you. I hope you can see, but you can see the scoring inside this cover there. That's from the standard 15 tooth. It ate away inside there. So I don't even run that at the moment, but with the 14 tooth, there's definitely a lot more space. I found the 14 tooth is just a nice all-rounder, but let's take a look at the gearing. So you can go to gearingcommander.com and then type in your bike, the sprockets you run, I think tire sizes, etc. And then you can check what RPMs you are running at a certain speed. So I used 107 kilometers per hour. That's on the GPS. So with the 15 tooth, that's 4,200 RPM at 110 indicated. So 107 on the GPS. With the 14 tooth, it's 300 RPMs low at the same speed. So 4,000, so higher at 4,500 RPM. So that is more or less where most of the torque is delivered. I know one site says it's peak torque 51 Newton meters, I think, at 5,000 RPM. But if you look at a graph that I saw a graph somewhere on a site, it's fairly flat. It starts, I think, high in the 3,000s and then it stays flat past 5,000. So the torque is quite wide. But that's a change in gearing of 7.1%. So the RPMs is 7.1% higher with the 14 tooth compared to the standard 15 tooth countershaft sprocket. I wasn't sure at all what will happen because it is closer to the maximum torque, so the engine should struggle less to maintain the speed, but then the RPMs are lower, so I didn't know at all. So let's have to look at my notes, my first thoughts when I stopped next to the road to turn around at the halfway point. Okay, so we're halfway on the 14th sprocket, halfway into our 100-kilometer run on this tank of fuel. There's a bike. There's a lot of noise, so I'm going to try to speak quickly in between the noise. Let's just wave. Okay, so a quick update on the 14th tooth. The immediate thing is that this 14th tooth is so much more torquey. I mean, I'm not at the maximum torque yet, which is at 5,000 RPM. It's somewhere in the 4,500s. I'll put it in the screen somewhere, or I'll chat about that later in the video. But for now, I can feel I'm much closer to the torque of the bike. So you just want to go. It's much more fun, and you can definitely tour like this at 110 kilometers per hour, maybe even 120. This time, I only geared down once to 4th gear when it was 60k per hour zone. All the other times, I just kept it in 5th gear. Even on the steep uphills, I kept it in 5th gear. It was so easy to maintain the speed. So it's definitely more fun. I am not sure at all what the fuel consumption is going to be like because obviously there's more torque, so that might reduce it, but then the revs is higher, so that might increase it. But I'm not sure at all how it will compare to the stock 15 tooth sprocket. We'll see. I'm very interested to see. It is a bit cooler today. I don't think that will make a difference. There was a slight breeze initially. I couldn't feel it on the bike, and because this is an out and back route, 50k is out, 50k is back on the same road, any wind from behind or from the front will mostly cancel out anyways. So I'm going to turn around now, then we're going to fill up, and then we'll see how this compares to the 15 tooth sprocket. Ooh, now it's quiet. Woo! Anyways, this is much more fun. You can definitely tour both on the 14 and 15 tooth at 110, 120 k's per hour very easily, but this is just more fun because you can just pass easily with just twist the throttle. The bike just feels way more alive. It's a noticeable difference from the 15 tooth. Anyway, let's turn around and I'll chat with you too. So the 14 tooth is definitely a more fun sprocket. It's usable. It's very usable in mixed riding. I like the fact that in second gear, you can use second gear from earlier on. So on the trails, it's nice and easy. You can stay in second gear. It's there because there's a big gap between first and second. So it's easy to ride in slow second gear with the 14 tooth. On the highway, I thought the rest are going to be too high at 110, but it felt very comfortable, and you can actually pull on the uphills in fifth gear and still increase your speed very comfortably. So it feels like a different bike at that speed. It feels like it's more powerful. So I really love the 14 tooth, and you can comfortably tour at 110, maybe even 120 with that 14 tooth. 120, it sounds like it's a bit high, but it's still, I think it's going to be still less than 5,000 RPM. So you're there at the max torque at the speed limit. So that's quite nice. I didn't know at all what the fuel consumption is going to be like. So it was a surprise when I checked. It was 5.7 liters for the 100 kilometers. That's 17.53 kilometers per liter, 41.3 miles per gallon. So I think it's about 6.7% more fuel. So very close to the gearing. 7.1% higher RPMs, 6.7% more fuel used. So it correlates very strongly with the RPMs. So next, I wanted to try the 16 tooth. So I was very interested to see, and that's a huge sprocket, the 16 tooth. I fitted it on the bike. I first actually Googled this because I wanted to find out whether it's safe to run the 16 tooth. Many people say there's about 1 millimeter clearance between the crankcase or the engine case and the chain. And they couldn't fit the sprocket cover. Now, I fitted this. There was no way the sprocket cover is going to come on. I know Fritz that sent me the sprocket says he's got a design to do your own sprocket cover. But there was no way that I'm going to be able to fit something in there. I first thought of taping it up, but as I pushed the bike around, I could hear there's some scraping there. So I don't know whether it's my chain, because I know a lot of people do run the 16 tooth and they say they haven't had damage. They looked after a couple of 100 kilometers and there was no scoring on the engine case. But I'm always a bit paranoid, especially at speed. And say if something goes in there, it picks up a rock and it goes in between the chain and the engine case, that could cause a serious damage. But anyway, so I took a feeler gauge to see what the clearance actually is, because it's difficult to see there. And I could actually not fit a 0.6 millimeter. That's a 25 thousandths of an inch feeler gauge. Wouldn't go in between. I couldn't slip it through the chain and the engine case. So obviously that was not going to work. I don't know where it must be my chain, because it's a standard bike with a standard countershaft. So I couldn't test the 16 tooth, which is a pity. I don't know what the reason for that is. So if anyone else has fitted that before, please let me know what type of chain you're running. But anyways, so I could not test that. So then I fitted the 13 tooth, and that I was very interested to see that. I decided after the 14 tooth not to test the 13 tooth at 110 because the revs was already quite high. And then I said, why not? So I put on the 13 tooth, went out there, and when I got to 100 kilometers per hour, I realized, no, I'm not going to maintain 110 with the 13 tooth. It's quite high, and the bike is very lively. You can feel its maximum torque at 110 kilometers per hour. But it pulls like crazy. It feels like a completely different bike, no matter what gear you are in. And at 100 kilometers per hour in fifth gear, you just pull it and the bike goes. I am very keen to see what this feels like in the dirt. This was just a quick run on the freeway, but I didn't do a fuel consumption test. I think it's sort of pointless. I think it's definitely going to be more than the 14 tooth. One interesting thing with the 13 tooth is you can't fit the standard sprocket, what do you call it, the plate that keeps it on there, the keeper. So you have to use the C-clip that came, Fritz sent me a C-clip. So that's very easy to switch. You just need a screwdriver and a pliers, and then you can pop it off, pop it back on the trails. So that's the only way to fit the 13 tooth. But wow, when I turned around, I did a couple of donuts there. I didn't want to go too far off-road. I didn't have my motocross boots on. It was just normal running shoes, so I was a bit, didn't want to go crazy. But wow, just lift the wheel. You can check this out. I'm no good at wheelies, and I'm always scared I'm going to flip over. When I go this high, it feels like I'm hanging from the rear, and I close it. But this thing, you just open it and it lifts the front wheel. It was insane. But anyways, the 13 tooth, I'm very keen, and in the next video, I'm going to play around with this in the dirt, and I'll let you know in a video what it feels like. So I will be doing more testing on these sprockets. So if there's anything you want to know, want me to test, I'm going to do some acceleration runs, going to play in the dirt with the sprockets. So please let me know in the comments what you want to see, and please give this video a like, and then I'll see you next week. Cheers!